I have a couple other stories for Memorial Day with my two grandfathers, my grandpa Poole and my grandpa Merle. My grandpa Poole, I don't know much about his service in the war. He was also trained as a medic, like Uncle Howard was. But somewhere in his assignments, as I understand from grandma and through my parents, he became a Jeep driver, I guess, for a general, and apparently drove the general around. I don't know who the general was. I would love to find out. But thankfully, my grandpa Poole did return from the war safely. My dad was born somewhere. My dad was born in 1945, so he was kind of a war baby. I'm very thankful that I got to grow up knowing my grandpa Poole very well. In fact, I was telling my wife just the other day that when I was very little, my grandpa would pick me up. We'd walk outside, and he would ask me, "Where's the moon? Where's the moon?" And we'd look for it, and he would point it out, and he'd say, "There's the moon." And apparently, as a very young boy, I always called it Papa's moon. It was Grandpa's moon. So very, very blessed that I had my grandpa Poole for many, many years. Lived in the same town, worked with him, played with him, and very, very pleased. But I'm grateful for his service in World War II. My grandpa Merle was a part of the U.S. 96th Army Infantry Division. And he saw action in World War II in the Battle of Okinawa. Yes, the Army had some divisions that operated in the Pacific. And alongside the Marines, he was in the Battle of Okinawa. Grandpa Merle was a heavy machine gunner, specifically in the battle for control of Uza Ridge. And I have a photo here that my Uncle Bill posted. Thanks to you, Uncle Bill, for doing this several years ago. In this photo, he is actually in the middle of the photo, circled in an X, and I've highlighted that with an arrow. And he's carrying his gear and his heavy machine gun up a steep, muddy slope near Uza. Now, I was privileged to know my grandpa Merle as well. He survived the war. In fact, here's a photo of a cemetery on Okinawa with grandpa's handwriting on a little post-it note kind of pasted over the picture there, where he says, "The Lord brought me home." And through most of the years that I knew my grandpa, he was not particularly a religious man, but late in life, he really gave his heart to the Lord. He became a believer in the salvation through Jesus Christ and really became a God lover, and really grateful for that, and gave God the glory for his survival. Of course, there's a lot of issues with that because of all the men who didn't survive. In fact, in that battle for Uza, Grandpa and the 96th Infantry saw 514 of their buddies killed, and over 1,289 wounded. In fact, so many were killed in my grandfather's Company D that he was transferred to Company H. Overall, and that actually was in the Battle of Leyte in the Philippines. I'm sorry, I jumped the gun there. In the Battle of Okinawa, the 96th suffered 1,622 men killed and 11,984 wounded. And this was in May. This Battle of Uza was in May of 1945. So 3 or 4 months before Japan surrendered in August of 1945. But my grandpa Merle was a jovial man, as I remembered him. We didn't live in the same town, but he visited probably most summers. He visited, and several times my mom and my aunt and my cousins would go out to, I think, Maryland, where he lived, and we would visit him. And I just remember he was just a happy guy, And I never knew this picture again of him carrying the squad automatic weapon, the saw. I never knew that my grandpa was an absolute badass. And in that battle, I imagine my grandfather and his, I'm sure he had an assistant, laying the belt of 30 caliber ammo into that gun. My grandpa racking that thing. And squeezing the trigger to defend me. Before I was even born. Like I said, his buddies he had buddies that didn't survive. In fact, this story, and I'll ping Uncle Bill and my mom on this story if I got any details wrong, but I did hear a story that one night he was in a foxhole with a buddy. And Grandpa got up to relieve himself. I guess you didn't do that in the foxhole. And they came under Japanese artillery fire. And when he got back to the foxhole, his buddy was dead. And so that's how close my Grandpa Merle was to death. And so, I got to say on this Memorial Day, if you want to say anything bad about the U.S. military, and if you're a pacifist who thinks all war is some kind of horrific thing, don't make any comments around me, because I'll come unglued. I don't want to hear it, because I have men. I have badass men who rescued the wounded, who drove generals around. My grandpa was always a slow driver. Grandpa Poole. I bet he was just reacting to driving that Jeep with that general in all around. He was probably a pretty good driver. He probably was pretty good. And my Uncle Merle, who saw death face to face, man. I'm extremely grateful. I think of them every Memorial Day, and I'm extremely grateful for all the men and women who have given their lives to resist global bullying, to resist small groups of absolutely insane humans, hate-filled humans, who are bent on killing others to advance their ill-founded cause. And when you look back through history, those people always lose. They always die. They always they kill themselves like Hitler did, because they're just cowards. And they deserve it. They deserve to die. They deserve to have the Russians coming into Berlin, and just they deserve to see all their ill-fated and misguided and hate-filled efforts crumble to the ground. They deserve it. And they deserve to have citizen soldiers like my grandparents stand up against them and stop their insanity. They deserve it. And so it's no different today. It's no different when our young men and women of today go up against absolutely ridiculous supposedly religious regimes, which are just fronts for their insanity of destruction that they want to dish out on countries like Israel and death to America. What did I ever do to them? So I applaud all those who take up arms against these kinds of sick, ridiculous human beings who are subhuman. Let's be clear what we're talking about, who are subhuman. And I applaud all efforts, as there have always been good men and women, to stop these people. So on Memorial Day, this is not just a day for hot dogs and baked beans and potato salad. This is a day to pause and be really grateful for the men like my grandparents, my grandpas, and my uncle, who put a stop to human insanity. We're a part of that great force to balance out those who were crazy. So God bless you on this Memorial Day, and God bless America.